Hello everyone, this is Carla and welcome back to the studio and thank you for joining me for another episode of Throwback Thursday. So for this Thursday's episode, I will be featuring the Wisteria Wishes Bundle. This is a photopolymer stamp set and there are coordinating Wisteria dies that go with it. So let's get started on our first card. So I have a piece of Flirty Flamingo. This measures 8.5 by 5.5 and I've scored it at 4.25. I have a piece of polished pink. This measures 5.25 by 4. I have a piece of basic white. This measures 5 by 3.75. And then I have two scraps of basic white, one measuring 3 by 3 and another 2.5 by 2.5. So to get started, I'm going to take my card base, I'm going to fold it and burnish it. So, and I'll set that aside. And then my polished pink piece, I'm going to take that, I'm going to set that aside as well. And then on my my larger piece of basic white, let me bring in just a piece of scratch paper to put underneath because I'll be stamping off a little bit on this piece. So the colors of ink that I'm using for this project are Bermuda Bay, Flirty Flamingo, Granny Apple Green, and Polished Pink. So I'm going to start off with my Granny Apple Green. And the stamp image I'm going to use are these stems with the leaves. I'm going to ink this up. And I'm going to stamp over on the left hand side and on the right hand side. But I'm going to kind of bring this down a little bit to where the base of the leaves are going to line up to the bottom of the cardstock. You know, just leaving some room up near the top so I'm not cutting off some of the flower image that I stamp on there. Okay, and then I'm going to ink it up again. And I'm going to do the same thing over on this side. And I'm not going to worry about the middle because I'll be stamping and die cutting another piece that will go over this. Okay, and actually while I got that out, I'm going to bring in this 3 by 3 inch scrap piece and I'll ink this up again. And I'm going to stamp that on this piece of cardstock. Okay, and I'm going to set that aside. That will be die cut with, let me actually bring out the dies that I'll be using for this card. So I'll be using this die right here. So I'll set that aside. And then let me bring in my Flirty Flamingo ink. And I'm going to bring in this larger cluster of the flowers. And I'm going to ink this up. And I'm going to line it up. And you can see that the top part of this one flower to the left is going to go right off of the top edge of the cardstock. That's okay though, it's not much. And then I'm going to repeat the same thing over on this side. And again, a little bit of it's coming off. Alright, and then I'm going to bring in this 2.5 by 2.5 inch scrap. And I'm going to stamp this on there. Okay, so I'm done with the Flirty Flamingo. And then I'm going to bring in my polished pink ink. And I'm going to bring in the more detailed image. And I'm going to stamp this right over these Flirty Flamingo flowers. Okay, set that aside, and I'm going to do the same thing on this piece. Okay, now for this piece, I have this die, and I'll be die cutting that, so I'll set that aside. And then, that's a lot of ink on the block. Pressed a little too hard. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in my greeting. And my greeting says, faith is about trusting. And then I'm going to bring in my Bermuda Bay ink. I'm going to ink this up. And I'm going to stamp this right up near the top, in between these flowers in the center. Now a little bit of the greeting is going to go into the flower, but that's okay. Being that this is a darker color, you'll still be able to see the greeting. Okay, and so that's what that looks like right now. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to die cut these pieces. I will be right back. Okay, so let me bring in my pieces. Now for this, I'm going to bring in my mini dimensionals. And let's see, I'm going to take my polished pink piece and yeah, I'm going to take this and I'm going to glue this down to my card base. And that bottle is the Tombow multi-purpose glue that we sell in our annual catalog. I like putting it in that fine tip glue bottle because you really don't need a lot of this glue for it to adhere your paper really well. Okay, I'm going to set that aside. Now for this piece, I'm going to take my greenery and I'm going to add a few mini dimensionals onto this piece. And some of those areas behind the leaves where there's a little bit more room. And then I'm going to add a few more towards the base. Let's see, we'll put that one right about there. Okay, and then I'm going to remove the paper backings. Okay, and then I'm going to place this in the middle between these two stamped images, and I'm going to bring it down a little bit to where, just like the way I stamped it, where I got the base of the leaf, I'm going to place that right at the bottom of the cardstock, and I want to try and get this straight. So it is going to overlap some of the flowers that I stamped in the back. Let me close up my glue. I'm done with that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my mini trimmer and I'm going to trim these off. Now you can do the same thing with a pair of scissors. So I'm just going to bring this down a little bit and just kind of butt the edge of that cardstock right up against the edge of that blade. And then I'm going to hold it down and then I'm just going to trim those little pieces off. Let me get rid of those. Okay, so I got a nice flush cut there. Okay, so then I'm going to take this piece, bring in my glue again, add some glue to the back of this. That glue bottle, that fine tip glue bottle, I did get it off of Amazon. I got there's a package of 10 of them, and I do have a link for it in the description of the video. Okay, so I'm going to press this down, so, and then I'm going to take, well, I'm going to take my glue and I'm going to close it up so it doesn't, the tip doesn't get clogged up. I'm going to take my flowers, these flowers, and I'm going to use my mini dimensionals again. This time, I'm going to kind of come up near the tops of these flowers. And I'm going to add another one just below it. I don't want to go too low with these because I am going to be covering some of these branches up right there. Okay, so let me remove these paper backings. So with this stamp set, if you stamp it with the flowers going down this way, it would be Wisteria. Do it this way. Now I know there is flowers that are like that. Now I know there's bluebells, but I know there's other flowers that are similar to that in different colors. I don't know what the name of it is, but so it's really multi-purpose, this stamp set on the flowers that you create. Plus anyway, it's card making, so when it comes to flowers, you can do them in whatever color you want to. I mean, you can do them in blue, purple, green, pink, orange, yellow. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of glue onto those stems. And then I'm going to take these and I'm going to bring them down so that way the center one doesn't cover my, well, let's bring it down a little bit. So that way it doesn't cover my greeting. So I'm just going to press these down. And then I'm going to bring in my Wisteria, shake it up. And I'm just going to brush some on the flowers that I popped up. I'm not going to worry about putting any on the flowers that are in the background. And I'm not being perfect on how I'm putting the Wisteria on there. Just want to add a little bit of sparkle. Okay. And then for my embellishments, I'm going to bring in my Take Your Pick tool. And the Iridescent Pearls Basic Jewels. So on this sheet, I already used the larger ones, and you can see I kind of colored them. So I'm going to use these little mini ones. I think the little mini ones are really cute. And I'm going to add one like right down here in between these two flowers under the greeting. And then I will add another one up here. And then one more. I can get it lifted up. I'm going to add that one right over here. Okay, so that is our first card. On to our second. Okay, so for my second card, I have a piece of Tahitian Tide. This measures 8.5 by 5.5, and I've scored it at 4 1/4. I have a piece of Orchid Oasis. This measures 5 by 3 3/4. A piece of Basic White. This measures 4 3/4 by 3 1/2. I have a scrap piece of Parakeet Party. This is about 3 by 2 1/2. And then I have a scrap of Tahitian Tide. This measures about 3 1/4 by 1 1/2. And then another scrap. This is Orchid Oasis, and this is about 3 1/4 by 1 1/4. So I'm going to start off and fold and burnish my cardstock. Now, most of all the colors in this particular card is in our current 2022-2024 in color collection. So come the end of April, I believe, is when the annual catalog will be retiring. These colors will be retiring with it. So if these colors are something that you really like, these are nice and bright and just cheery colors, you may want to get your hands on between the ink pad, the re-inker, the cardstock, and any of the embellishments. I'll actually be using some embellishments that feature these colors as well. So I'm going to take my card base, I'm going to put that aside. And then my piece of Orchid Oasis, I'm going to put that aside too, because this basic white piece, I'm going to be stamping on that, and then that will go on there when I'm done. Now for these three pieces of scrap, I'm going to bring in the dies. So on my Parakeet Party, I'm going to die cut this leaf image. On my Tahitian Tide, I'm going to die cut this larger detail of the Wisteria. And then on my piece of Orchid Oasis, I'm going to do the smaller detailed piece of the Wisteria as well. Okay, so I'm going to bring in my scrap paper. And the colors that I'm using for this card are Berry Burst, Orchid Oasis, Parakeet Party, and Tahitian Tide. So I'm going to bring in my Tahitian Tide, and I'm going to bring in this cluster of flowers. And what I'm going to do with this one, I'm going to ink this up, I'm going to stamp it off, and then I'm going to stamp it up near the top. And then I'm going to do it again. Come up here and stamp it there. Now to kind of fill in, I'm going to stamp it and stamp it off, and then I'm just going to come in and just fill in these white spots up near the top here, like so. And I'll get right in the middle here. Okay, just to fill that in. Then I'm going to come in with my Orchid Oasis ink. And I'm going to bring in the more detailed stamp. I'm going to ink that up, stamp off on there, And then I'm going to stamp right over this Tahitian tide. And then more, fill in a little bit down here. Okay, so I will then on here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in, well, I'm going to close this up first. I'm going to bring in my Berry Burst color, and I'm going to stamp my greeting, and my greeting says, to a friend who's all kinds of wonderful. And either got ink on my hand or something. I got some on the cardstock. But I think that will be covered. We'll cover that up. So I'm going to stamp this. Make sure this is lined up. I'm going to stamp this right over in the bottom right hand corner. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside. Don't know where the ink came from. So for these pieces, I'm going to die cut it. So this is where I'm going to speed it up. So I will be right back. Okay, so let me bring in my pieces. So, I'm going to take my basic white piece, and I'm going to bring in my glue, add some on the back of this, and I'm going to adhere it to my Orchid Oasis piece. Center that. And then I'm going to take this whole piece and I'm going to adhere it to my Tahitian Tide card base. Like so. Okay, so then for this branch piece, I'm going to adhere it on here. But what I want to do before I do that, I want to go ahead and take these pieces and adhere it together. So these will line up with each other. But before I do that, I want to add a little bit of like some kind of design element on that. So I'm going to bring in my scrap paper again. And then I'm going to bring in my Orchid Oasis ink. And this one stamp that was the detailed of the flower. I'm going to take this and I'm going to just stamp right over this piece just to add some decorative element to it. Like so. Just to add a little bit of dimension to it. Now I'm going to take my Tahitian Tide ink. I'm going to do the same thing for that piece, but I am first going to bring in my Stampin' Scrub, and I'm going to clean this stamp off first. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing. Then I'm going to bring in my Parakeet Party ink. And again, I'm going to take this stamp and I'm going to clean it off. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in this whole leaf image. And I'm going to do the same thing on this. Okay, put that aside. Close this up. Okay, all of our stamping is done. Alright, so I'm going to bring in my glue and I'm going to add just a little bit in some of these areas that are in the center of this flower. I'm not going to use much. Okay, and then I'm going to line this up so the base is going to line up. So near the top. It shifted on me. And because I didn't use much glue, it's going to dry a little bit faster. So I'm not going to be able to shift that over anymore, but that's okay. It still looks good. I'm just being a perfectionist. Okay, so then I'm going to bring in this branch and I want to line it up to see where I'm going to put it. Let's see. Okay, we're going to put it about up here. So on this, I'm only going to add a little bit of glue. Whoa, just a little bit of glue on the branch part here. A little bit more glue than I wanted to use. The other thing you can do also with something like this, you can use our adhesive sheets and put that on the cardstock before you die cut the piece out. Okay, so then I'm going to put this about here and I want to make sure that this stem comes straight down because that's what our flower is going to be hanging off of. Okay, just press that down. Okay, now I'm done with the glue. And I'm going to bring in my mini dimensionals again. And I'm going to place a few on the back of this. So in areas where I can put the dimensionals where you won't see them. And let's see. I can get one in there without it poking through. And then I can add one more right up here. Okay, then I'm going to remove these backings off. And then I'm going to place this right on my branch like so. And then I'm going to bring in my Wink of Stella, and just like I did on those pink flowers, I'm going to add some onto this, getting a bit on that Tahitian tied piece that's underneath as well. think I'm about done using this Wisteria. I think it's about empty. I've been using it a lot on my projects. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in, these are the 2022-2024 in color pearls. So these colors, it's Sweet Sorbet, Tahitian Tide. This is the Parakeet Party. This one is the Starry Sky, and that's the Orchid Oasis. So I'm going to use the Orchid Oasis ones. These are really pretty. They have this nice iridescent color to them, and these are definitely an embellishment that I want to get a couple of packs of before they retire for good. Okay, so that is the second card. There is a little ink smudge that you can see there. I'm not seeing any on my hands, so I don't know where it came from, but let me go ahead and let me remove this paper, scratch paper, and let me bring in the other card that I did as well. So here was our first one. This is more on the pink side. And what kind of flower that is, I do not know. And then we did the Wisteria one using the purple and the blue. So that's our two cards using Wisteria Wonder, not Wisteria Wonder, Wisteria Wishes. Wisteria Wonder was actually a color that we had long ago that has since retired. So if you liked these projects, please give the video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. It does help me in not only growing my channel and getting it out there for more people to see, but it also helps me in building my Stampin' Up! Business. So until next Thursday, everyone have a blessed one. Bye-bye.